Welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I am your host, Drew. Not here with my co-host, Josh, but I am here with one of my oldest homies in the music thing, Mr. Nick Heredia. Hand claps all around for Mr. Nick Heredia. Nick, say hi to the people.
Hello, folks. It's good to be here.
It's been a long time coming, Nick. We've been trying to do this. And I also will say, your record that we worked on together still holds the award for the record that took the longest time to get finished because world catastrophes kept happening.
Yes. So many crazy things happened.
Dude, it was wild.
It was wild. And then, I moved. We're human beings too. We also just had stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk through it. We'll talk through it in a second, but I get into more specific details. But I just want to say off rip, I was thinking about it whenever I was making my coffee this morning and getting prepped for the the conversation today, and I was like,
this is an old,
man, that album really did it.
Yeah,
but
it did.
For the people who may not know you, Nick, why don't you go ahead and just kind of intro yourself a little bit, kind of tell who you are, what you do, what kind of music you make.
Well, again, it's really good to be here finally on the Home Studio Hangout. First and foremost, I love my boy Andrew Simmons. He is just the man when it comes to music, and that's why for my first record I wanted to come to him. And the kind of music I do is indie alternative, definitely currently singer-songwriter with the music I've just come out. Definitely just stuff that is originals, all different vibes, kind of why the album title is called The Universal Contemporary. We'll get into that, but it's definitely all these different vibes for the first full-length record I wanted to put out. And again, there's no one I'd rather work with. And so long time or not, I'm happy what happened. I'm happy that we still kept it, did what we did and got the finished product. And I put it out this year, and I'm originally from Greenville, South Carolina, Andrew's hometown. And we actually went to the same high school, but I used to be in a band. He's helped us track that stuff back in the day. And he's just always been someone I look up to in the music industry, so it's always good to come to him for advice on stuff. And
yeah, dude.
Beyond that, I do indie alternative music. I'm currently living here in Atlanta. I've been here since 2020, and still just making new stuff. Also helping other people with their projects. I'm now in a Chili Peppers cover band, which started up this past February.
That's really sick.
That's just because I have a local friend who just really wanted to be our Anthony Kiedis. He's like, I really want to do a Chili Peppers band, and he asked me. He asked me to do the guitar, and I was like, sure. I was like, they're not my favorite band, but who doesn't want to make some extra money just doing Frusciante riffs?
I'm about to say they also got hits, so it's not a bad time.
It really is a fun time. I do so far, with the shows we've done, it's been a fun time. It's been we're all friends, so it's a good time for sure.
Well, so it's funny. Yeah, me and you have known each other since I guess high school and roundabouts there, and I worked on a project you were in for a song or two, and then I worked on another project you were in for an EP or something, and then you were getting ready to do your own music, and you were friends with my sister and Becca and Logan, and had known them for a hot minute. And
I've known them for a while, and it's funny, for the longest time, I think throughout high school, I didn't know that you guys were siblings, even though you guys shared a last name. And I'm like, when the math finally was mathing, I was like, oh. And I was like, okay, I'll never make that mistake again.
That's really funny. We also, to be fair, barely look alike. She is very blonde, and I am not very blonde. I'm really very dark-headed.
What it is, you guys don't I think it's because I don't know. I have one brother, and he and I similarly look, but we also do look a little different too.
Yeah.
Because you know my brother too.
through marching. Yeah, me and him were in marching band together, and he was in drumline when I was. I think he was over drumline whenever I was over the brass section in marching band. So
Yeah.
it was a good time. It was a good time. But yeah, no. Let's talk about firstly. Uh, before we talk about the record, let's just talk about some of your influences in general and kind of like your musical journey, because like you said, you've been in some bands, and you kind of, I met you playing pop punk first, and I think I was producing some pop punk stuff, and I produced Logan's band The Surrender, and like what's a throwback.
I love that. I love that band.
Fun fact, that band was like, I think it was actually the first project I ever recorded and got paid for, was working with Logan's band,
That is
which is
awesome.
very funny.
I mean, that is what made me. It was because of that project that I originally, when I was in my pop punk alternative band, Remind Me Later, I suggested you. I was like, "Oh, dude, well, this EP really hits." I loved This Surrender. I loved them very much. I had seen them live, and yeah, they were solid stuff. And then the EP was dope. And so it's funny how something so at this point so ancient, but still such a gem in our Powdersville, Anderson County, Greenville County.
It's like 18 years old. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
That's nuts. Probably not actually that old. Honestly, it was probably like 12 or 15, but at this point,
but
still,
over a decade. That's still like, whoa.
It's still like a decade old. That's nuts. Which just means that's how long I've been getting paid to do this also, which is also crazy to think about. But yeah, so I met you playing pop punk, and I would love to hear, like, have you always been interested in because now I think of you and I don't think really pop punk anymore. I think like Bon Iver. I think like, honestly, I think a little bit like old Kanye for some reason. And maybe it's just like the marriage of, maybe it's just because me and you have talked so much about Kanye and stuff. But I think like mainly like the Bon Iver, like avant-garde, alternative indie crowd, maybe like Phoebe Bridgers, that kind of stuff is kind of more of where I feel about you, and I feel like that's an interesting transition.
I do mentioning Bon Iver and Kanye, it makes so much sense because not only have those two artists like collab, but is like especially for this record and the EP I was doing I did before or while we were working on it, that I put out in beginning of 2018, or end of 2018, beginning of 2019. But I that both artists, like just like myself at that point, wanted to use their voice like an instrument and kind of layer, and and I think that's where it started with me, because when I was doing the pop punk band, we started off doing more alternative stuff. We weren't officially a pop punk band until we just grew into it back in the day. And then the more we did it, the more I still enjoyed it. But I actually do have more of a heart for the alternative indie sound, because you can just very much go where you want with it. I feel like the alternatives are the modern day hippies now. Yeah,
and, pretty much. Yeah, like they're the hipsters.
Yeah. So, enjoying that, not to get political, but they're just the more liberal crowd that are more able to enjoy things that are experimentalist and from other countries and whatnot, and other vibes. And that's where I wanted to really, as a musician, always wanted to grow. Coldplay being my favorite band, I always just like. It's funny, when I started learning music at age 12, I was like, this is going to be a fun hobby. And then the more I did it, and then it comboed with me listening to Viva La Vida and A Rush of Blood to the Head, those two albums. I was like, okay, this may be what I actually just want to do now. I still have that performer heart because originally I just wanted to be an actor. Another reason why I moved to Atlanta. But I definitely, the more I did music, the more I enjoyed it, and the more I had like a goal and kind of a vision, and the more I started songwriting. And I feel like that is personally where I do have where I do think I have like that's my strongest. I'm okay at guitar, I'm okay at vocals. I'm not like amazing at, but when I combo them and I sit down, I'm definitely not a good like freestyler, but I can definitely sit down and kind of craft something. I think this record is a testament to that for sure. I definitely am excited because it took so long to make it, and I've been working on all new stuff. I'm excited that I'm just like now I'm on my own. I'm kind of starting to make the new stuff, and I know while I'm promoting that it'll still go. It still looks like a good timeline. Each album has its own aesthetic. I still feel proud and happy of where I'm at and where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
No, and the there's still some of those pop punk elements in a couple of the songs in the record that we worked on, just because it felt like it needed to do that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think of specifically like
I think Invisible Man was like
Invisible Man. There's a mist inside my head. Yeah, that last chorus, and and then even like, oh god, what was it?
It's funny.
I think
I just gotta say real quick that song, I had demoed that back when I was in Remind Me Later, the pop punk band, and my drummer Luke Oslin at the time, I had showed him that song. He was like, "Dude, that's so good," and he always enjoyed the demo songs. I'd like we could maybe do this, but it's also just something I'm working on, and he'd always just be like, "Oh, that's good." And some of it was stuff for this record.
That's really funny. Well, so let's talk about the record. We had, and then we can kind of get into just more casual chat because me and Nick are at the core just homies. So like I want to make sure we spend time talking about the record, but I also just want
to
just chill and chat. So, but up front, talking about the record, I remember I was in a transitionary period. I think listeners of the podcast have heard me talk about like my transitionary story of like going full time in music a lot. It's funny because you were in a lot of that transitional point, which was I had got amicably parted ways, we'll say, from my job at Anderson at the college I was working at, and me and you were talking, and I was like, dude, I think I want to get a coffee job. I'm kind of like, not feeling, I'm not ready to go full time, but I don't need like a full time job, And I know you get this because you're in a similar spot now, you know what I mean? Where it's like kind of like the half and half world. And me and you were talking, you were like, yeah, dude, just come work at Starbucks with me. They're hiring. And like, I was like, you know what? That sounds kind of fun. I could do that. And you ended up getting me the job at the Starbucks where you work. And we ended up working. That was like, what, 2018? Something like that, 2019?
Yeah, it's 2018, 2019. I think it was I think it may have been 2019 to 20, because I remember during the pandemic, they gave us that month off.
Yeah, it was definitely 2019 because I worked there for a while pre-pandemic.
Yes. It was only 2019. I just remember you being like, I can definitely take the hours, and I remember just being like, I have never lived through this before. I was so terrified, as most people were. But I remember but you were such a champ. You were like, all right, what a mask up, I'm golden, and I was just like, nah, I'll stay home. I'm asleep all the time.
Yeah. I that's really funny. So you ended up getting me that job at that Starbucks, which actually ended up catapulting me into a love of coffee, but also catapulting me into having the free time to be able to work on music more.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because we were on very similar schedules. You were like, dude, I have this record I've been wanting to work on it with you specifically. I just haven't. I've been writing it, and so I haven't had time to like start putting anything together. Like, would you want to start putting some stuff together? And in 2019, I was like, heck yeah, dude, let's go. Didn't have a kid at that point. I just had the doggos, and so it was like every week or every other week, me and you would like get off work, go to the studio, and just start working on your and start pre-proing out your songs and like working them out. And like you would be like, all right, so I wrote this one. I'd be like, well, let's move some stuff here. We started like the pre-production process of
Yeah, dude.
finalizing those demos, which was really fun.
And you and I mean, like, again, this record was it started off when you and I were both in transitional periods, because at that point I think you weren't in your home that you were in. Like you were living somewhere else.
We were still in the apartment. We were living downtown. At that point, yeah.
So it's like you were doing that. I think I was like I was chilling at Starbucks, but nothing else was going on. But having what we were working on really kept me going. And
it kept us getting there. It kept us getting in there at 5 a.m. opening doors and.
Dude, yes, like we always had a lot of opens together, which I actually always appreciated, because our opening squad was always fun.
Me, you, and Brenna, the crew,
and Aiden, dude, Aiden's dope.
Yeah, yeah, Aiden, and golly, dude, I forget like half of the people that we worked with, but like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, man. And I think I try to tell people this also. Other people work at Starbucks, and they're like, yeah. Everybody sucked. And I was like, listen, you don't understand. We had a freaking crew at our Starbucks. It was awesome. Like, everybody was chill. We had, like, everybody was down with each other for the most part. Everybody was pretty chill and down with each other. And, like, you know, everybody was just making drinks and poking fun and talking about anime and talking about music and whatever. Like,
dude, we do so much like just talk about everything, but we'd also be able to we all did our jobs well, is what I believe.
We really did.
We still did what we did, and I do love that, like, that you working there led to you also like leaving Starbucks and then going to like one of our local coffee shops, because I really did love doing, at the time when we were starting that record, I would do some acoustic sets at the place that you were doing coffee at Cohesive. And that was
shout out Cohesive Coffee. Josh Williams, one of my favorite people in this world.
Dope people for sure.
Good, love Josh. It's a really funny story. After that, like, you played the homie card and got me the job at Starbucks, and you were about to leave. I think you had left, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you had left already by the time I was out the door. Which we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But my friend Eric, you remember Eric? Yeah. Eric played the homie card with me and got me the job at Cohesive. So
let's go.
So I just have homies get me coffee shop jobs.
You're a likable guy. What can we say? We like to be homies with you, and that's gonna, of course, be like, hey, well, I know a guy who knows a guy.
Yeah, for sure. So talking about the record, we started the record when we were both working at Starbucks. We were getting pretty good ways in, from what I remember. I think we had already we had tracked drums, I think, and then a bunch of other things kind of were going on. We moved house. So that was like the first thing that happened. That was the first thing that kind of put a stop in it, is like we ended up buying a house, and the VeggieTales stuff happened for me in 2019 as well. So it's like I was gone. So I was gone a lot, and we moved house in 2019, and so like that put a little bit of a pause on your project, and also I think you were like saving up money to like get to the next section of the project.
Half
as well.
Of this record is also me just like being a broke ass, but also just,
I mean, that's fair. Hey bro, starving artist for real.
But also I mean, here's the thing: you're not starving on the first project. You're not starving on an artist if you're not like starving on that first project. If you're not putting the blood, sweat, and tears. If you're not putting that, dude. Yeah. So I'm with how everything played out, the end result was still amazing.
Yeah, but it's just funny. So the house happened, and then we were like, all right, I'm in my new house. I got my new spot. Let's lock in. We did a couple sessions in the new house, started working, and I will say those like sessions, those pre-production sessions, I feel like there was some magic that happened of us just like sitting there fitzing around with guitars
and feeling
like,
out stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just trying some stuff and being like, what is this sound? What if we did this sound? What if this sound sounded like this? What if we did the vocals like this instead?
We
and
put a lot
like,
of notes.
Just
yeah.
really, really, really trying to like expand my production horizons and your songwriting horizons a little bit more. I think we both like expanded each other's abilities a little bit more over the course of that project.
I agree. I'm glad you think that.
Yeah, it really is true. And then the pandemic hit, and that put a stop on everything.
We tried.
We did try. I think we got like 1 or 2 sessions in during the pandemic, like post the quarantine section.
Yeah.
But then you moved.
Then I moved. Yeah.
So it was
same
like
year.
Yeah, that exact same year, mid pandemic, he was like, going to Atlanta, baby.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm out. I was like, all right, well, that makes things infinitely more complicated.
It really did. And like looking back, I'm like, dang, I could have just stayed and kept on going. But yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, hindsight's 2020 in that scenario. You were doing what you thought was best at that point.
2020 is like, it's such a fever dream looking back, and you're like, how did that just happen? And then like after some time, we're like, okay, we're back to normal, I guess. Like,
I guess whatever that is now.
Just ignore. Yeah, how are we just ignoring the insanity of that whole year?
Yeah. No, for sure. And then like some stuff happened in the pandemic where like Toast and Jam, the studio that we tracked drums in, moved, and like their entire hard drive crashed, and so we lost all the drums that we tracked.
Oh, that was a heartbreak for me because it sounded so good. Doing it again was awesome. Steven, shout out Steven Sykes.
Shout out Steven.
The man, and I just think that first couple days was amazing.
Steven ended up retracking the drums for some of the songs later for us, and he did an incredible job in his studio set up at his house. And it was really, really good. But there was something that I missed about those first takes where I was so sad.
I'll never forget like that first mix of Vanilla, because you both had this idea to do something with like the hi-hat on the chorus, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, dude,
that was crazy stuff. We were very we're still very visionary artists, you and I. So whenever we get together and then we add Steven to the we add other talented musicians in the mix, it's just we're gonna shoot for the stars.
For sure. But it was just really sad, like that whole 2020 period. It was like pandemic started, then you moved, then Toast and Jam like flooded and they had to move, and so we lost all of our recordings from there. And then I was like, all right, I guess we got to rebuild this thing from scratch again. But it was infinitely harder because you weren't living 5 minutes. Yeah, you weren't 5 minutes away from me anymore. You were 2 hours away from me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that whole section of time was complicated.
Yeah.
But 2021, we ended up locking in finally. And then I had a kid.
Dude, I mean, blessings.
And then I had a kid.
But you know what? Blessings. Some of these wrenches, like again, new home, kid. These are blessings. Not in disguise. They're just like they are what happens, and we're always thankful for it. And again, I also look back at us from post 2021 into 2023, finishing up everything.
Yeah.
And all those sessions were still very fun. Still, to expand on what you were saying earlier, I think we still we're growing and growing and doing more. It's just always working with the best tools, and then again, knowing people. It was cool because at that time I think I met during those sessions. This is when I met Shama finally, and he's a solid dude. He's
so cool.
I love being able to be in that space and that community area. And then right down the road there was a coffee shop there. You and I would get coffee, we
Shout
still
out Mountain
had
Goat.
Mountain Goat. Yeah, that was the best.
Shout out Mountain Goat.
Coffee, music, and vibes is just like what we
Yeah,
do.
dude.
And again, if I was living back in the upstate, whoo, let me tell you.
Yeah, dude. No, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's just like I said, I think working on your record was like the most life happens in the most intense ways possible learning experience for both of us, in a good way.
Yeah.
In a frustrating way, but in a good way.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't think it was bad necessarily. And for the reason of, I don't think if we had finished the record, like if nothing had happened and we had finished the record in 2020, there's no doubt it would have been good, but I don't think it would have been as good as what it is now.
I agree.
Or what it released this year or last year. I cannot remember.
I think
was it late last year or early this year?
It was late last year was when we were like finishing up everything. But
that's right.
But like January this year is when I finally
is
put
when
it
dropped. Yeah.
And I do like think this. I'm still looking back at like release from this year, and I'm like that was such a solid. Because what I plan to do whenever we got the ball rolling, because I also was on Ben, my buddy Ben, who you know, he has a podcast called Affable Chat. They normally do reviewing movies is normally each episode, but they also do off-script episodes where they talk about whatever. And they also used to do back in the day a lot Twitch streaming, and they would just 2 hours of normally YouTube content that they share in the Discord chat that they have, but they also, I was like, can we do like a album listening party and you stream it and like we'll listen to front to back the album? And he was like, yes, let's do that. And he went out of his Twitch hiatus to make that happen. And I think paired with everything I was trying to put out to promote it, I think I'm still promoting it. I'm still, you're never done working. And but I do look back at that first release week, and I'm like, oh, dude, those, because I'll never forget the number. Looking at my Spotify artist number, and like all my friends and family were like, we're so happy it's finally out.
Yeah, dude,
it's good to have.
We have people from the Starbucks crew back then, like being like, oh yeah, this is so good.
Like finally, yeah, and because they were there too. Some of them would be.
They heard the demos.
They heard the demos,
the
exactly.
Versions.
We'd be on break and we'd just show them what we were, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Yeah.
I'll never forget doing divvying out tips in the back and listening back to be like, okay. Like sometimes you're not working, or sometimes I wasn't working, but we'd text each other, be like, "Hey, man, I think looking back, this could be a thing that we do. We do so many different things like that.
Hey, let's move this thing around, or this needs to sound different, or whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole era was really, really fun. And I'm glad, like I said, that in the end, in hindsight, it worked out to be a really great record, and what it is would not have been what it is now.
Yeah.
If not all of the weird life stuff getting in the way. And also, it gave you time you actually ended up leaking out a couple singles across the time while we were still working on stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of in the lead up, and that helped grow the audience a little bit more for that final like release day stuff. And
like I actually I'd never, because this is my first album, I never have been part of a musical project where like you've put all this anticipation on something. It's like, how do you keep it going? And it's like, putting out the songs that are gonna be crowd pleasers, if not just more enjoyable after each listen. And that's what we started with all those. Like I think it was like a total of 3 songs, and then the
I think it was 3 singles. Yeah.
And I was like, that was and it started from like 2021. I think I put one out each year or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think you did.
I did.
You may have done 4.
Oh, I may have done 4 because I did. I'm trying to remember. Oh no! You know what it was? I did Polaroids at like beginning or like middle of 2021, but then I put Vanilla out in like January 2022 or something like that. and then I put
Yeah.
Invisible Man 2023. So it was like a while, but then the album had to come out.
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, you're right. It was June 2023 that you dropped Invisible Man. And then January 2022, you dropped Vanilla. And then Polaroids was September 2021. So, yeah, you kind of did like a single year because the album was just taking a long time. But
taking a while.
I mean,
then it makes me think of John Mayer kind of did the same thing around that same time because he dropped his album Sob Rock. And he put out like singles like, I think New Light came out like 2019 the first time.
Yeah, it was a long time. He sat on New Light for a long time,
dude.
So
stuff.
which means there's like precedent set to do that and it not feel weird.
Yeah,
from an artist that you take a lot of influence from as well.
Definitely. Even though I'm not like I think I loved Sob Rock, but I think it's arguably my least favorite, just because I love.
I would agree with that.
And his other ones, but he's still John Mayer. That album is still solid. Like he still just makes good music. It's kind of like how I feel about the current new Tyler the Creator album. I'm like, it's good, but that 3-album run that is Flower Boy, Igor, and Call Me If You Get Lost is just unmatched.
I mean, yeah, you're right.
But I do love Cornucopia a lot.
I posted something on Threads the other day. I said, "'Tis the season for every white boy to be obsessed about Lenny Tyler the Creator record." Dude, because every person I know who like doesn't normally listen to hip hop like that, which I know you do and I do, like we don't, but I know there's a lot of people I'm like, you don't listen to hip hop, but you're posting this Tyler the Creator record, which is dope, but it's like very like, yeah, you guys are a little bit of like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. No, I so get it and understand. And Tyler is that album, kind of like how early Childish Gambino was kind of like that, like a gateway for some people who don't really listen to hip hop. And it's funny because this is an album he's put out like very close to like the holidays. It was November he put it out, and he already has his Grinch EP, which is already like hot. So and in this new album, he's wearing like all green. It's like it's all green, so it's like it's just tying into the hall. I feel like dude. I feel like it's only gonna get even bigger. And this tour he just announced looks really good. I'm bummed because he did a $5 like album like listen and performance at the Eastern, and like within 30 minutes of Golf Wang posting it, it's sold out. And I was like, darn it, I wanted to go so badly.
Dang.
Yeah.
But to put a bow on your record specifically, it's out now.
Yeah.
It's called A Universal Contemporary. It is a great 12-song record. I think every song is something special. You got songs about seeing God while you're high. You have songs about loving people. You have songs about losing people. You got songs about boots and pants.
Yeah, you really got a variety of ideas.
Yeah. I think I called it your mixtape. Is what I called it.
Yes, and it so is, and it's funny going back to our mutual friend Ian, who you introduced me to, but I'm trying to curate like the live band stuff more. I did one live band show this past March, and that was exciting. And I'm just trying to like garner it more and just keep adding water to the soil and seeing it grow more. And he was like, dude, honestly, like you should kind of market at least the live act at kind of like a Bruce Springsteen or like a Nick Heredia and he was like, you should be Nick Heredia and the Universal Contemporaries. I'm like, that is dynamite. That is dynamite. And that is like that was like for a live band for my stuff. Currently, that is solid. I can totally.
That also allows you to like swap out players for the band, but not necessarily require you to have the same band necessarily.
Sure.
And like have a little more flexibility. So like if you need people to fill in or whatnot, it doesn't feel weird.
Especially the more I listen to albums like John Mayer's Continuum or my roommate Slim Pickens, he's another Atlanta artist. He and I are big into like having some brass instruments, maybe a saxophone
Yeah.
or a trombone or a trumpet, and whenever we hear like some of the local bands who inquire that, we're like, okay, in a perfect world, you have a couple of those in your band.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So yeah, everybody should go check out Nick's album, Universal Contemporary, because I'm proud of it. I know Nick's proud of it.
Yeah.
It was it was one of my favorite releases that I worked on this year.
Let's go.
Year's not over, but it is going to stay top 5 for sure. Mainly because it was such a journey.
Journey and I'm sure
Journey and a half.
Journey and a half, and I'm sure on your end, like there are, I don't know if there's any personal songs that you were like, okay, this, not necessarily that it was just most fun, but like I think after listening to all of it, you're like, okay, I do think this one, Nick, this is probably my favorite of Nick's. I was always curious what
Well, yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah. So I really enjoyed Central Park Revolution. I think that one was my favorite. I think even initially when you brought that to the table, and you were like, "I have this song," I was like, "This song is awesome."
It's a good first song of the album.
It's a great first song, but also it feels very complete in every aspect of it, and it's very well written. Like very well written. I think I showed that one. I think that was one of the first ones I ever showed to Logan whenever we were working on everything.
Oh,
and I was like, dude, this one is a killer song.
I also like admire and look up to Logan. So hearing that
as
a
songwriter,
that's awesome.
Yeah, Logan's been on the podcast. For those who haven't listened, he was on talking about he does work for Premier Arts Collective, and we were talking about arts as a vehicle for healing.
Yeah.
So if you guys listen to that, that's the Logan that we're mentioning. If you want to go check that, that's in the feed. But Central Park Revolution, one of my favorites. Jeep 30, I think, was super fun because we did so much weird stuff. Like there was so much interesting like choices, like synth sounds and like percussion sounds that we made, and once again a very well written song, but also like has the big like post rock ending and like tremolo guitar picking stuff,
a lot of layers and stuff. I there was a lot going on in that song, and I like. It's funny because I was so excited about what it would become in the process. So I'd always still have like like whatever we made of that song on my Mac, and I'd always just be like, oh, I can't wait to like, and because that song's about smoking weed, I'd be smoking here and there, and it would be like the best time, and I'd just be like, oh my god,
for sure.
I'm always just it would just make me very excited. And then when we were finally finishing it up, and we're getting the album ready for it to come out, I'm like, I cannot wait for people to hear the song. And I'm like, and I love that people are gonna be like, how do you pronounce this song title?
yeah.
And I'm like, it's Jeep 30.
Jeep 30. The other one I'll mention is Boots and Pants. And that one, the song is great. I think it's a super fun song. But from a production standpoint, you challenged me to like make it feel, because you used a looper pedal to write that song.
Yeah.
And you wanted it to feel like you perform it live.
Yeah.
With a looper pedal. And so I was like, all right, so we need to structure it in such a way that it feels like it's being like things are being looped and things are being added and taken away in sections, but nothing changes so drastically that you couldn't pull it off live.
Yeah.
And I think we did a pretty good job of nailing that. Pretty much everything in that song is like your voice, my voice, or your acoustic.
I do love that, like the after that buildup of the all your friends leave you in the darkness line,
Yeah.
We broke it
The
down.
halftime
The
break.
halftime, that is your voice, and I think that is
Yeah.
my favorite part because you nailed every little thing, and I love it so much. And I was bragging about it because I knew when that was coming up when I was listening to the final mixes. I'd show
Yeah.
it to like some of my like Atlanta crowd, and they'd be like, "What is this song?" And I get to tell them the lore of it, and it's just like so cool.
Yeah.
Because not only did I start writing that song on a looper pedal, I started writing that song on an app called Keezy back in college. Whenever we'd be, and I'd show it to people at parties whenever we're super lit, and they'd be like,
Yeah.
"What the heck?" They'd be so blown away, and it'd be just a funny ass thing to just do them.
Yeah.
And then like as I grew up, I was like, I want to take that song that all your friends leave you in the darkness thing and add it. And so I wrote a song. I actually built a song out of it. And then I was like, dude, yes, like let's. And then so when we were recording it, I was like, okay, I have to double down and make it loop friendly. and
Yeah,
so
for sure.
and looking back, I'm like, okay, that. And I actually have not performed that song live in a long time. And now that the record's out, it's like I should probably get back into it. I didn't realize when the album came out, a lot of people surprisingly were like, "Dude, that song's awesome." I'm like, "Okay, cool." A lot of people.
It's super unique. You don't hear a lot of people doing that take on music.
Yeah.
I would once again recommend everybody go check that song specifically out because I think what we did from a production standpoint in the studio was really interesting. I had to make sure there were no full takes of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the only full take was your main vocal.
Yeah.
Everything else, in order to keep it feeling like a loop, I literally had you do it in like 4-bar chunks.
Yeah.
Everything I had done in 4-bar chunks. So it's like I made you get the exact right guitar take that felt a little live, that felt right in that 4-bar chunk, and then we just copy and pasted that all the way down.
Yeah.
And like same thing for like all of the other parts.
We just got solid takes, and then we try to that's exactly what we
copy
did.
and pasted it around, and then like same for the vocals. Like there's in the bridge there's a looped vocal part where like you stack like 4 vocals on top of each other, and like it's so sick. I ended up making it the bed of the halftime breakdown, almost like a synth pad.
I love it so much.
And so there's just a lot of different, from a production standpoint, it's a very interesting, a lot of weird and interesting choices, I will say, from us that I think make that song, as a song, firstly, it is a great song.
Thank you.
Doing those interesting choices elevates the song to be something more unique, even outside of it just being a good song.
Totally. It does kind of draw it to be, this is not like other stuff. So yeah.
For sure.
I'm glad you think the song itself is really good. I think one of my personal shout outs on the album is Enceladus, because I love that it's like the first half is like there's not really a rhythm to it. It's kind of just freelance, and then we build a rhythm. And you and I, like when we were gearing for the record to come out, we were like, okay, when you do it live, you should probably actually extend that part and like actually add percussion. Make the live version way like cooler.
Yes,
and I was like, that's
and,
genius.
And I love the idea of the album version of, because like that song in particular is just vocals and vocoder, and that's it.
Yeah,
And I love the idea of that song being what it is on the album, because it's number 3. It's kind of like you've hit them with like singer-songwriter song, Central Park Revolution. Jenny is like your almost country type deal.
Yeah.
And then, but Enceladus is your Bon Iver Creeks, like vocoder only type song, as like a breath going into Jeep 30, which is a weird, like it kind of sets up the weirdness of Jeep 30 in a way, which is pretty cool. But making that song more live friendly allows you to like make it more interesting to the listener, whether they come see you, they're like, oh, I know this song. and then the end switches up and you add more instrumentation to it and like start looping stuff or add more band instruments to the end, and it's like,
Mhm.
yo, that's really sick actually.
Yeah, I really it's funny because that Boots and Pants and then Enchiladas was they both were songs that people were like, oh, this is probably my favorite because they were so different, so special, and I wanted that one to be very space friendly. I wanted to sound like like a fucking
Yeah.
like a freaking alien wrote it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you succeeded in that for sure.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to ask you is like after having almost, 10 months away from the release at this point, like what song do you feel like you're the most proud of?
That is a really good question. I do think I'm with you on that. That Central Park is one of the the most well crafted, well produced, like genuinely like everything we did in the studio and then everything you did mixing wise. I was like, oh my god, that was like we nailed it. That is probably up there.
Yeah.
I think it may be that one. If not, I do honestly do love the science experiment a lot. I do love
Mhm.
everything that is cool there. I love what you did like with the organ near the end. I love what we did
Mhm.
with our vocal chants.
Yeah.
I do love anytime we get quiet in that song and it builds to come back. And I think I do like just love all the elements that I was trying to bring from the records that I was like influenced by into this,
Mhm.
and I think that song also specifically encapsulates that because I was really going for Coldplay's like Parachutes in that last song,
Yeah.
and I think it really like hit that vibe very well.
Well, it's interesting because like following that up with Fire at the very, very, very end is almost like a bonus track.
Yeah,
Feels very like first album Coldplay.
that's yeah, kind of because and that's the thing. I could have like gone double down and been like hidden track, but I was like, no one really does that, and you're not there yet. You're not there, like
Yeah.
maybe for another project. I'm also just thinking musically. Uh, I'm such an artist with just even the little sounds, and this working with me on
Mhm.
this record. Um, I definitely am excited for all my new ideas, and again, it's all part of a catalog. It's all part of a thing.
Yes,
Each thing
for
you
sure.
make, and I used to get anxiety about that. I'm like, oh, what if the new stuff isn't, or what if like this doesn't stack up with that? And I'm like, I think what my goal already is sound wise for each new thing. I'm like, I feel like it will stack up, and I feel like all those songs on that record have helped me kick that off. And I do, yeah, I think Central Park is probably my favorite, just because I think it is solid sound wise from front to back. And it's almost
What was
pushing.
the what were you gonna say?
I was just saying it's almost pushing 5 minutes, but we were able to make it like a 4 minute and like 50-second song. Like we were actually able to make that happen, and I was really excited about that because I always get worried when a song is almost 5 minutes.
Well, and it doesn't feel like it goes 5 minutes. That's the other thing.
That's another thing, yeah.
I listened through it multiple times. That was something I was also worried about with that song in particular. Was like, this is a very long song to be an opener, and I intentionally listened to that song like way too many times. And on multiple passes, I was like, this does not feel, there's no way this is almost 5 minutes. And I guess it's just the way that we, in combination of like the way you wrote it and the way that we ended up producing it and the way everything flows,
Yeah.
like it constantly pushes you from one thing next to the next thing, and it doesn't allow you to get bored.
I think that's
Doing that for almost 5 minutes is really, really hard, actually.
well, yeah, I think it does keep everything in that song keeps it going, and I think that just it's a testament to why it's a solid. So I think that's probably why.
Sure.
I think that's at the same time also why I was like, hey, track one.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great opener. So everybody should go listen to a Universal Contemporary. I'll say that again. Nick Heredia, Universal Contemporary. Nick, what are you working on now? Now that the album's wrapped and you're kind of like at the end of the promotion cycle for the year, I know you've been working on other stuff. I mean, you have talked about it, but like, what's your next goal now? You're still down in Atlanta. You're also one of the first people I know, and maybe let's talk about this first. You're one of the first people I knew that was a busker.
It's funny, the busking, I like did that a little bit, but I definitely am like doing more of that, or like the acoustic gigging.
Yeah.
Way more because of some of the people I met here in Atlanta. There's an Atlanta artist named Joel Keeley who I was living with in 2022, and he was like, "Dude, that is how you're making like decent money." And I was like, he was not wrong. And it's funny that garnered me to start doing that kind of stuff. Coming back to Greenville to do that stuff, I'm actually going to be at the Aloft Hotel this Friday in Greenville.
Nice.
Performing from like 8 to 11:30, and it's like the high. They it's such a nice hotel that they actually they compensate you very well, and I love that. That's still kind of gonna be what's going on for me, at least moving forward to next year. Still obviously going to be promoting this record. I actually am before we actually started getting on the call and we were texting, you and I were talking about how like my plan is to start getting some more visual stuff for myself, to spoil myself for the holidays. I'm excited because I really want to start maybe trying to do a YouTube account or Patreon or Twitch kind of situation. Yeah. I definitely want to start just doing more content here in the Atlanta scene because it's very fun. The people I work with, and I get to also share, what I'm doing with Psychic Spies, the Chili Peppers tribute band that I'm in.
Yeah,
I can just show almost do vlog type of stuff. I also am already just trying to start recording and tracking the new record, but at the same time also pushing so a lot of gears are working for me
for sure
for the future. I also like I said, I'm trying to start garnering or start working more with the live band that I've been working with, and I'm just trying to again craft that. I think I'm going to be pushing more of a lot more live shows and a lot more working with Atlanta folk. I think I'm excited to just keep on doing that, and still coming to you for my like mixing advice and whatnot.
Yeah, dude.
Definitely, because
Well, and I know you. I know me and you talked about for your next stuff, like you really wanted to have more of a hands-on. You wanted to try doing a couple of things yourself, which is really sick, and I'm excited to see what you do with that. Like that's gonna be really cool.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see what songs you come up with and all that, and I'm excited to see you do more stuff, just kind of around and more, because I know this is something that you've struggled with, is like the positives and negatives, and we can talk about this for a minute before we're done, but the positives and negatives of the cover show busking thing. Positives, pays really well, pays really good, super consistent, especially if you get in with like the right breweries, the right places that'll book you really consistently, the right bars, those kind of places. Super consistent. Not the best though for original music.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that's the roadblock you're starting to hit a little bit more right now, is like trying to figure that out. So what's that been a little bit like for you?
That is great and so true, and at the same time, the way I've been able to do it, you always want to like play the songs that are of your originals that are gonna be popular, and some of that stuff is actually my new, as a person who gets excited about the art they're working on currently, they're gonna be like, screw it, I'm gonna show them some of the new stuff, but I'm also going to
test it. Well, it's also good to test it.
Yeah, test it, and then but for sure play like at least like the singles I put out for this record, but at least covering the artists the songs I like to cover that I know are crowd pleasers and whatnot. There's plenty of them. I like general music. And in fact, I'm just going to use this meme just because it is a 2024 meme. Back in April, May, I had no idea who Chappell Roan was, and now everyone's like,
Mhm.
I hope she plays Hot to Go, and it's like that becomes such a joke. And now I literally am like, I think I could cover that song. That is a fun one.
Yeah.
People like Chappell Roan, and when I heard her, I was like, okay, she's actually
Or espresso.
or a spread. Literally, that's just what I was thinking. Something that's Sabrina Carpenter.
Sabrina Carpenter.
Which is
Yeah.
crazy. Also, I'm happy they, I don't really pay too much attention to the Grammys as of late, but I saw they put out the noms, and I'm glad they both got nominated because
Yeah.
I got really proud for Sabrina Carpenter, especially because I found out I didn't realize she was a Disney kid because
Yeah, she was a Disney kid.
I was a Nickelodeon kid more so growing up. So,
Gotcha.
But I found out this is her 6th album, so I was like, dang, like.
Yeah,
And
she's been at it for a hot minute.
But I'm glad that I will say this short and sweet is a solid album, and like I said, when I finally heard Chappell Roan, I was like, okay, she's really good too. So yeah, all these crowd pleaser songs that people like, that kind of helps me. And then I think for next year, I think what I want to push for those kind of shows is like what I know is going to come back is going to yield results. I'm not going to always try and push that too much. If anything, I'm just going to push like a lot of rehearsals, a lot of tracking, being in the lab, and then working with other musicians on their projects, because I have that going. Again, I want to work with Ian and his band, help them out as much as they, because I have a fun time doing it.
Ian and Ryan are really great songwriters. There's a concept that I have like thought about for a while, and it's something that as musicians we don't really get an opportunity to do a whole lot, but is the positive of doing the thing that you're doing, which is like the cover show busking type deal, especially at a regular crowd, which is it's a concept called writing on stage. And it's a concept that mainly comes from comedy.
Oh yeah.
Which is like when comedians, they have like kind of an idea, or like an idea, like they're working on an idea, like they'll do a tight 10 or a tight 15. They'll do like some that they know will kill to kind of warm them up. And then kind of in the middle, they'll try out like this new joke and like see what works.
Yeah.
How the pause works. Like how, if you say the hook this way, how does it work versus this? And like writing on stage, like getting the reps in, because you get that instant feedback loop of they liked that or they didn't like that. That was funny or that wasn't funny. And so from a music perspective, that's generally really hard, because we try to make our shows like a really good representation of us, as they should, but at the same time, it's like when we do that and it's so pristine, there's not a lot of opportunity to do that and like try new material out or anything like that. So the way that you're doing it is actually a little more conducive to trying out new material. You can be like, oh, I just wrote this song, I'm going to do it real quick. I can knock it out and like I could see if people are vibing with it or not. You could do that on multiple different, this kind of person tends to like this song. So like when I do the visuals for it, I need to lean into like aiming towards these kinds of people, or write it with these kinds of people in mind as I'm working on the song. I recently got off the road with my friend James Tucker. He's a country Americana artist, and we were opening for this guy named Dylan Gossett. And before while we were in rehearsal for the show, James was playing us a new song that he had written. And I was like, dude, this is a great song. Like, this is a fantastic song. You need to go ahead and try it out during these shows. Cause like we were playing like 2,500 cap rooms every night, sold out. And I was like, it's a great opportunity to see if it's a strong enough song to make people stop and listen. And And so we put it right smack in the middle of the set, just him on acoustic and dobro, and like just trying the song out. And it's a slower song, so it kind of works in
Sure.
that spot too, kind of the dip. And then we kind of pick back up into
Oh, I love
the
that.
quicker songs as we get to the end. And it was a way for him to write on stage, per se.
That's cool.
It was still a little more written than what a lot of people would have, but still, it's like it was written enough to do. And like if he needs to make a change, it's not that big of a deal.
Sure. I mean, well, dude, like that's definitely something I do for sure. With the new stuff I'm doing, I have a new song. I'm just gonna say it's called "Misery," and it's a very, very, very fun song. It's probably one of the songs I'm really excited to put out eventually. But I'm also like kind of stuck on certain parts of it. But I'm like, okay, I know where it's going at least fully. So I've already been like kind of beta testing it at a couple gigs here and there, and that's been really fun. And I got that inspiration from because Radiohead used to do that. They did that with so many songs. One of my favorite songs from their album In Rainbows is called Nude, and in '97 when they were touring OK Computer, they had first written like a little demo. They would play it live, and like that song eventually like never like got recorded until 10 years later, or never like put out until 10 years later. And I'm like, wow. So like you can always still have a song idea and be like, okay, maybe tweak it until you know it can be perfect. And I will say the studio version of that song is perfect.
Yeah. But it also allows you to like say some things when you record something are good in a bubble or in a vacuum, but it's hard to know how it's going to feel until you do it.
Yeah.
And so being able to do it first and then come back and say, that felt a little weird, or this needs to be quicker, or this needs to be shorter, or I need to sing it like this. Then you go and actually record it. It gives it more of like a little bit more of your soul into it.
Totally. That's a really good way of putting it. And yeah, it's kind of like it is a musical. It's not musical improv because that is just freestyling and
whole different thing,
whole other thing. But it's like a form of it. It's like where you're like, okay, I can at least take this idea, test it out, and again, it's like what you said. Whenever it works weird or it's like you're able to come back to it and be like, okay, well, I can at least change this up. I can do all that stuff. It still helps the final product. It helps the creativity. It helps the juices flow. For me, that's another thing I try to just focus as an artist is like, am I stimulating my mind? Am I like not just with my songwriting, but just like with my day to day? I try to that way I can remain kind of a person with a specific goal. I think it helps me just be a good like an artist with a specific goal is as long as I'm testing out ideas and trying out stuff. And again, writing, just keep writing whatever I can, ideas and whatnot. I'm trying to start like reading and whatnot. I'm reading Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it so much, and it's kind of putting that in perspective for sure.
Don't make the mistake I made with that book and read it too fast. I listened to that book on audiobook, and so I listened to it on audiobook the way I listen to like fantasy books, which is like I listen at 1.4 speed.
Sure.
It is a slow book.
Yeah.
You got to get a physical or Kindle of that book, and you got to read that thing like page by page, chapter by chapter, and just close it immediately and sit there and be like, what does that mean?
Yes, and that's like, it's funny that you mentioned that because I do have a physical copy of the book, and I'm not done with it. I'm literally still just like, he breaks it down very, very easily for you to do that.
He does.
And I remember being like, I'll do that, and I'm like, okay, if I'm stopping here, I'll stop that. I kind of am letting Rick Rubin guide me, and I kind of am happy. I'm already deciding to. I'm glad I have the book. I'm like, oh, let's go. I'm excited to be like, okay, let me take this lesson and just, see where it takes me this week.
Yeah, I have to reread that book next year because I read it earlier this year, and I made the mistake of burning through it like super, super quick. And I was like, it's good, but I didn't get a lot out of it. But then I had a physical copy also because I like having both, And so I got a physical copy also, and I opened it up to a random page and read a random page, and like just read that and closed the book immediately and was like, this is how that book is supposed to be read. It's not supposed to be read like quick. It's like, I made a mistake. And it's like, yeah, it was just so much information and so much like deep, thought provoking, soul searching stuff.
He's a hippie too.
Like, imagine reading, well, sure, but imagine reading that book in like 3 days. That's essentially what I did. And like, this is way too fast. It's like a book that needs to be read over the course of like a month.
Because it's totally one of those like, I don't want to say it's a self-help book, but it feels like it's read that way. It's read like a chicken's soul for I don't know. As a musician, as someone who is just like always thinking about being creative and being an artist and just trying to do whatever I can for art, I thought it was. So far, I'm like, this is like. I agree with you being like, I need to read a little bit and then do things.
Go or just go sit by yourself for a minute, like, and just think about it.
Yeah, definitely mull on it. I'm enjoying doing the slow reads with it. And because I do like to read like fantasy and stuff or mystery and whatnot. I do love to read, but with that's like something I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read that again for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Nick, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. Thanks for coming up and hanging out and getting up this morning. And me and you were both moving really slow.
Yeah, it was,
but it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing. But dude, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. If people want to follow you or find you, where should they go? Where do you want to send them?
If you would like to check me out and what I'm doing, you can follow me on all my socials. All my usernames are NDH the Artist. That's my TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of it. NDH the Artist. Again, I'm going to be working on some more original music. Trying to see if I can start putting out like a song or two sometime next year. Very excited to just keep on making art. Keep on coming to Mr. Andrew Simmons here for mixing advice. Be like, okay, you'll be hearing from me for sure, sir. And then on top of that, I'm excited to just keep on doing some more live stuff, keep on working with Atlanta folk, and keep on just trying to bring music to the world.
Yeah, dude. Well, if you're listener, go listen to A Universal Contemporary, and also Nature, his other record prior to the one that I worked on, out on all musical platforms now,
which I will be revamping, or like retracking, remix. I'm gonna kind of do a newer version of that.
Yeah, but they should still go check it out because it's also a very dope record.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, but yeah, listeners, thank you so much for listening. Nick, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you guys next week on another episode. Love you, mean it. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast. If you could take the time to like, subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio platform, go ahead and make sure you're subscribed, and also leave a rating and a review. It helps the show get out to new people. We're trying to grow every single week. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast, and we'll see you next week.